Well, this is Senator Mike McGuire, who has really enchanted all of us over the last few years. And I have to say that he constantly amazes me, at least, with the ability he has to hit things right on the top. He just knows how to say exactly what's needed when it's needed. So, Senator McGuire, I'm going to turn the mic over to you, and then when you're done, if you'll turn it back to me.
Thank you so much, Mr. McKinney. Really grateful to be with you. Thank you so much for the invitation. And I'm thrilled to be with you this morning. And again, good morning. And thank you so much for allowing me to introduce you to Connor. I got to tell you, we really struggled getting pregnant over the last 2.5 years. And it's just such a blessing. And we are so thrilled. And thank you again for allowing me to be with you on this beautiful Sunday morning. First and foremost, what I'd like to be able to do, if it's all right with Mr. McKinney. Mr. McKinney, let us know about some of the topics that you would like us to cover here today. We're going to be given a state of the state, if you will, where the Golden State is at here on this September 12th of 2021. Would like to be able to focus first and foremost on our economy, how we're going to recover from this COVID-induced recession. Would like to be able to touch base on where we're at with the pandemic here in the state of California. Talk with you about vaccine mandates when it comes to employers. You're going to see that advanced here on the state and federal level. Know that it could be controversial, but would like to be able to talk about that here today. Focus on the issue of some of our biggest crises that are facing communities, drought and wildfires. Would like to focus on all issues of homelessness and housing. Would like to do a deep dive on all issues of broadband and connecting rural communities, ensuring that high-speed internet is no longer a luxury, but a right here in the Golden State, which is the land of opportunity. Would also like to be able to talk about wildfires and PG&E, and then finally do a little bit of a dive into this toxic coal train that a shadowy group out of Utah wants to bring tens of millions of tons of coal through the North Coast, the North Bay, and into the Port of Humboldt. I'd like to touch base on that, talk about the facts and some of the myths that are surrounding that. And again, it is such an honor to be with you on this somber weekend. And I just want to start out, I think we're all going to remember where we were at and what we were doing on September 11th. When I think about it, and I don't mean to get emotional, it was a defining moment in my life. I will never forget it. And we can't forget those who lost their lives, over 3,000 Americans. And we also need to honor and celebrate the heroes of that day, firefighters and police, co-workers and ordinary New Yorkers who ran into the carnage to be able to help neighbors in need. So today would like to be able to take a moment to be able to remember all of those families here locally and throughout the nation who lost a loved one on that day. And it is something that I know all of us will never forget. And it is one of the darkest days in modern American history. On the issue of California, it's a bit traumatic at the moment. We're coming out of the largest public health crisis that the state has seen in over a century. Politics couldn't be more divided here in the Golden State, and we have multiple crises happening all at once. Let me be clear, though. California has always been the land of opportunity. California will be the land of opportunity for decades to come. The state of our state, despite our challenges, is strong. We continue to be the 5th largest economy in the entire world. We've added 1.3 million jobs since April, and we believe that we're going to hit 2 million new jobs by the end of this year since April of 2021. Despite the challenges that we've seen, household incomes continue to rise. In fact, California has seen the most dramatic increase in household incomes despite being in the pandemic out of any 50 states. California also remains the #1 manufacturing state in the United States of America. And our economy has grown by 20% over the last 5 years. Now, when you compare that with Texas, Texas economy has grown by 12% over the last 5 years. Yes, we have our challenges, but I do believe that we are also our worst critic. The Golden State has been and will continue to be the land for everyone, the land for opportunity. And we have to continue to focus on the programs and the services. And we have to continue to focus on the people that make this state so great. So let's talk about where we're going. We believe that we're going to continue to see a strong economic outlook through 2022. In fact, it is anticipated the next 3 quarters are going to be the strongest economic quarters that we have seen in California in the last 60 years. Now, that's been driven both by strong economic activity on the online sector. We're also seeing record tax flow in both corporate as well as personal income tax flow into state coffers. The state's bread and butter, it's corporate and personal income tax. As you all know, we had a record surplus year, $75 billion. And that's on top of the additional $26 billion in federal assistance that have already arrived here in the state of California. So what are we doing with this surplus? Number one, we continue to pay down debt. We continue to pay down pension debt. We continue to pay down bond debt. Number two, we are returning the money back to taxpayers. In fact, California has ushered in the largest tax cut in 50 years, $8 billion back to small businesses for the PPP conformity. So we conform with the federal government, ensuring that all small businesses in this state will not pay taxes on any PPP loan. Now it's been forgiven to a grant here in the Golden State. $8 billion in tax relief. We've also advanced $115 million in fee waivers. If you are a hard-hit business in the sector of being a nail salon, a hair salon, a barbershop, a bar, a restaurant, if you are a hard-hit business like a gym or a masseuse, you will not have to pay your permit fees to the state this year and next year. The state has absorbed that. We're also investing in those who need help the most. When you take a look at our economy here in the Golden State and throughout the United States, we are at a time where we have never seen a greater divide in wealth. Those who were wealthy prior to the pandemic have seen greater wealth increases than they've ever seen in the last half century. And those who were struggling prior to the pandemic are hurting more than they ever have before. That's why we've also advanced $6 billion in additional grants and tax cuts to those individuals through the form of stimulus checks. In fact, we've seen about $6 billion in personal state stimulus checks advanced back to individuals who are making $75,000 individual income or less over the last 6 months. Those checks will continue to be processed, and individuals will receive that through the month of December. And we're also investing in the pandemic. As you know, California has one of the highest vaccination rates out of any state in the union. California's vaccination rate, at least at the one-shot level, 2/3 of all Californians have now received at least one shot. 72% of all Sonoma County residents have received at least one shot. We continue to make progress on the pandemic, but we still have challenges. And I know that this is going to be controversial about what I'm going to say here next. That's why the state is now mandated vaccinations for all healthcare workers, no exceptions. That's why we're advancing vaccination mandates for all state workers. And that is why we have advanced vaccination mandates for all individuals in K-12 public schools, teachers and classified employees. And that is why you heard President Biden yesterday announce that any employer that has 100 employees or more will now be mandated to be able to usher in vaccine mandates. Now, there is some limited religious exemptions. There's going to be limited health exemptions on that federal mandate. But with this new federal mandate that is now going to be put in place by OSHA and the federal government, it is believed about 100 million Americans will be impacted by this new mandate that will be brought forward by the federal government. Now, why is that important? When you compare California's vaccination rate, for example, to Georgia or Mississippi or a lot of southern states, We are, at times, we have a third more or even double, in some cases, the number of residents who have been vaccinated. We have to hit between 70 and 80% nationwide, be able to achieve that herd immunity level. Otherwise, we're going to continue to struggle with this challenging pandemic and public health crisis. You're also going to see the federal government advancing desperately needed vaccines to communities and countries across the globe, because we have to get a hold of this pandemic. The livelihoods, the health of our neighbors, and our economy depend on it. And I want to say that this surge that we're currently seeing is completely avoidable. Vaccines are plentiful in the state of California. Vaccines are safe, and they're always free. And in fact, we're going to put into the chat right now, if it's all right with Mr. McKinney, a link to My Turn. The state of California has put together a list of free health centers across Sonoma County and throughout the state where you can go to get your shot if you so choose. It is now in the chat to be able to find a free vaccine clinic near you. Where are our biggest challenges right now in California? It's in rural counties. For example, in Del Norte County. Just a month ago, Del Norte County's vaccination rate was 34%. 34%. They're now up to 43%. And the reason for that is we've seen 21 deaths in the last 30 days in Del Norte. That's significant. Del Norte County is a county of 28,000 folks. It is desperate. The ICU remains full. We continue to work day in and day out to make sure that we're surging in additional ICU nurses and emergency room nurses, respiratory therapists, and X-ray technicians. We have advanced dozens of additional ventilators into Del Norte County. We've expanded the hospital into tents in the parking lot. So we still have major pockets of challenge in the state of California. And I promise you, I will not rest until we're able to tackle this crisis. And our district is diverse. The district that we all live in right now, the 2nd Senatorial District, runs from the Golden Gate Bridge all the way up to the Oregon border. All of Marin, about 85% of Sonoma County, all of Lake, all of Mendocino, all of Humboldt, all of Del Norte, and Trinity counties. And where our major focus right now remains communities of color, Latino and African American communities, Native American communities throughout the North Coast, as well as Lake, Mendocino, Humboldt, and Del Norte counties. That's where we're seeing the strongest surge of the pandemic among the unvaccinated. But again, we have made incredible progress, and especially 65 and up. Just want to say thank you. We are well over 80% vaccinated rate here in Sonoma County. I would like to now turn our attention to the issue of drought. First of all, as we know, California's climate has always been variable, but the last couple of decades have brought in the hottest years on record here in the Golden State. We know that the climate crisis is making droughts here in California much more intense. And in fact, I am deeply alarmed about where we're at. Many climate scientists are saying that California, the West Coast, in fact, states west of the Rockies, the impacts of climate change are trending 20 years earlier than what was anticipated. Additional droughts, changes in wind patterns, and more intense wildfires are our future. But we can't give up. We know that we can continue to mitigate this climate crisis, which is why the state of California is going to be advancing record funding to help communities combat the crisis of drought. Watersheds across California continue to be beyond parched. And what our biggest concern is that we're going to see less snow and more rain, which means we need to modernize the California aqueduct system and our entire storage system, which is based off of snowmelt. From the Rockies west, since the 1950s, Rockies west, we're seeing a third less snow annually than we did since the mid-1950s. That's why this state needs to develop a modern era water plan for the state of California. This year, we're short 500,000 acre feet, 500,000 acre feet of water. And the way you measure 500,000 acre feet, it is a foot of water over 1 acre. right? That's how they get to 500,000 acre feet. We're short 500,000 acre feet. So we are focused on delivering for communities. Here's what you're going to see. The state of California has launched the largest drought response in our history. $3 billion is currently moving right now for communities, help endangered species, and of course, to be able to focus on farm and ag. $200 million is now currently moving to help cities and counties on recycling, groundwater recycling projects, as well as well rehabilitation. $350 million for groundwater assistance to be able to drill additional wells and to be able to do additional recharge projects into the aquifer. We're moving $400 million into communities for recycled water grants and off-stream storage. So what does that mean? We're going to help communities pay for the project to start irrigating playing fields and softball fields and soccer fields and city facilities and golf courses, not with potable water, but with recycled water. There's $400 million in the budget to be able to start moving that forward. $500 million is in the budget right now to be able to help homeowners and small businesses to be able to remove their turf, their grass. $285 million has been allocated to fish and wildlife to be able to help endangered Chinook as well as other endangered fish species to be able to survive the drought. The state is investing more than ever before, and we know the upper Russian River in particular. Healdsburg North has been impacted greatly because it's solely reliant on the flows coming from Lake Mendocino that is fed by the flows from the Eel River. Anything south of Windsor receives the confluence from Dry Creek and Lake Sonoma. And that's why you've seen cities like Healdsburg and Cloverdale and Hopland and Ukiah have to take such dramatic action. On the Mendocino coast, we're now shipping 30,000 gallons every week of water to the coast from Ukiah because the village of Mendocino and other small hamlets on the Mendocino coast are literally running out of water. There is going to be dollars for this, but I got to be candid. These are Band-Aids. We have to look long-term at long-term solutions to this ongoing crisis. If we don't, it's going to be short-sighted. And candidly, our area, our region is going to be impacted the most. I'd like to switch to schools. Schools have always been one of my top priorities. I'm a big believer that the best investment that we can make as a state and as a nation is in our kids and in public education. Public education is the ultimate equalizer in our society. And we have gone, since I've been in the Senate, dead last in the nation. California is spending less on our kids in 2015 than the state of Mississippi. Let me say that again. The state of California was spending less in 2015 than the state of Mississippi on our kids in public schools. We've gone from about $6,700 per student in 2015. We are now ushering in $21,000 per student now in K-12 public schools, the highest in student spending in the history of the Golden State. This is where we need to focus. We have to focus on keeping our public education system strong. We're also bringing in an additional $500 million for career training programs. 72% of public high school graduates in the state of California will not go on to a four-year college degree. 72%. That means we have to make college more affordable and accessible, and we have to provide non-college bound kids with the tools they need to be able to compete in the 21st century job market. That's why we're going to be investing $500 million every year in career training for high school graduates. In addition, we're helping be able to get single moms and moms who have to make a choice, like my mom did, between going to work and looking at childcare. My mom and dad had a really bad divorce when I was really young. And if it wasn't for my grandma, as I've shared with you before, I don't know what my mom and I would have done. And there were so many days where my mom had to choose between staying home at work for childcare or working a full-time job. And by the way, she had to work a full-time job to be able to put food on the table. So We have to focus. One of the biggest lessons that we've learned is so many low-income families, especially women, can't get back into the job place, into their career because they don't have access to subsidized childcare. So number one, we are putting $500 per child onto the table to be able to get childcare centers reopened across the state of California. 400,000 kids depend on state subsidized childcare. In addition, we are now funding an additional 400,000 slots for childcare over the next 36 months. We're doubling the amount of childcare positions in the state of California. And this is why this is important. 2/3 of minimum wage earners, 2/3 of minimum wage earners in this state are women. If 2/3 of minimum wage earners in this state were men, minimum wage would be $30 an hour. It's $15 an hour right now. If you're earning $15 an hour in Sonoma County, you have to work literally 3 full-time jobs to be able to make the average rent. And you have to figure out how to be able to get your kid to childcare to be able to go to work. This state has to focus on women. When women are successful, this state is successful, which is why we need to continue to focus on raising the wage. And that's why we need to continue to focus on advancing additional childcare slots here in California. I also want to focus, if it's all right with each and every one of you, on the issue of broadband. Broadband or high-speed internet, we have major pockets in Sonoma County of communities that don't have access to high-speed internet or don't have access at all. They're unserved. I'm a firm believer that high-speed internet is no longer a luxury. It has to be a right. And this pandemic has shined a spotlight on the massive disparities that exist in California's small towns and inner cities when it comes to the lack of internet. And millions here in Northern California, especially in rural California, are on the wrong side of the digital divide. And this state has taken historic action over the last several weeks. And I'd like to be able to talk about it here quickly before Mr. McKinney throws his shoe at the screen and tells me to stop talking and we move to questions. And I apologize, I'm going late. So here's where we're going to focus. The state is going to make America's largest investment in public broadband in the history of this country. $6 billion has been set aside by the state. 60% of the $6 billion is from the federal government. 40% approximately is from the state government. We're going to advance middle mile and last mile internet. I want to describe what those are. We need to be able to get competitive internet pricing in this state. There are 3 monopolies that we have. We have one monopoly and really 3 companies that control internet in the state: Comcast, AT&T, and Verizon. Those are the big 3. And they can charge pretty much what they want. And they control the middle mile. Think of the middle mile of internet as the highway. So what companies do, they literally lay fiber underground. That fiber then connects the last mile in communities. So think again as the middle mile of broadband, high-speed internet, that fiber as the highway. We need to build a public highway for the internet, high-speed internet across this state. So we're going to invest $3.25 billion for the construction of state-owned fiber for middle mile. We're developing our own high-speed internet highway. Then we're going to take another $2 billion for the last mile. The last mile is solely focused on cities and counties. So we build out the middle mile highway. That means we have competitive internet pricing for the middle mile against AT&T, Verizon, and Comcast. And then we give $2 billion to local communities, $1 billion for rural, $1 billion for urban, the last mile of internet to build out their communities, to connect communities, whether it's free Wi-Fi in neighborhoods, to building out their own fiber system. In addition, for small communities, We're establishing an account called a loan loss account with $750 million, where small rural communities can borrow against it to start building out their last mile projects in their community. We also are going to provide $50 million for rural communities for technical assistance, for environmental and engineering and consulting. We also are going to waive CEQA. We're going to waive the environmental requirements for the build out of the middle mile along the state highway system. So literally on Highway 101 on the shoulder, we're going to mandate that Caltrans has to allow the build out of the middle mile on the shoulder of all highways. That would be exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act so that we can expedite these projects in the next 4 years. This is a game changer for rural California, where Verizon, Comcast, and AT&T could give a flip about those communities. They will never be connected because it simply doesn't make financial sense. And we are the land of Silicon Valley, and in just an hour and a half north, you could be unserved by internet. It is unacceptable. We're advancing the largest broadband project in American history, and we're going to be successful in connecting rural communities and urban centers with high-speed internet. It has to be a right, no longer a luxury. If it's okay, I'd like to quickly talk on the issue of fire. I'm going to give some startling statistics quickly. If you look at the average acres burned over the last 20 years in California, it's about 830,000 acres every year over the last 20 years. But if you look at the last 5 years, we've seen that average double to 1.6 million acres. So over the last 20 acres, California has burned about 830,000 acres. Over the last 5 years, we've burned 1.6 million. Last year, we had our first 2 million acre year. We fully anticipate that we're going to hit near or exceed 2 million acres this year. All but three of the largest wildfires in history have happened in the last 5 years. About 800,000 homes in California are at extreme risk of wildfire today. And over the last 40 years, we know that weather conditions have changed here in California, meaning we are actually seeing a 1 to 1.5 degree increase, especially in Northern California during the fall and summer months. We're also seeing in Northern California a change in wind conditions that are drying out our forests. I don't know, I've noticed it since I was a kid. We are getting more wind in the evening than I ever remembered when I was growing up in Alexander Valley. And in fact, scientists confirm that. We're seeing warmer temperatures later in the year, less rain, as well as drier conditions. We have to focus on fire prevention. We have to focus on fire response. So let's talk about prevention. $1.5 billion has been moving this year. Vast majority of that is now in the hands of locals for fire prevention, building wildfire fuel breaks, taking out dead and dying trees, moving forward with brush removal. In fact, we know we've been working with folks in Kenwood. We're going to be able to start in the state park to be able to start advancing a brush removal project along the back of homes. So where areas have burned, we're going to start doing defensible space for any home that is that borders the state park. So we have advanced about $155 million for forest health grants that allows local communities to be able to remove dead and dying trees to create fire breaks. And then we have $125 million into fire prevention grants that allows community to do fire prevention planning, to be able to clear vegetation among emergency routes. And we're hiring more firefighters, 1,400 seasonal firefighters this year. We've hired 14 additional hand crews for the California Conservation Corps. We've spent $15 million on additional National Guard hand crews to help backfill the loss of inmates. We have purchased 12 brand new Black Hawk night fighting helicopters. We have 5 now in state. one in Lake County that at the Boggs base that now covers Sonoma County. It covers 1,000 gallons of water, can carry up to 10 firefighters for quick attack. We have just struck a deal with the United States Coast Guard. We purchased 7 C-130 cargo planes that will be outfitted with a large bladder in the belly that will then be the largest fire retardant planes that we have on the force. This is absolutely critical, and we know that we have much more to do when it comes to wildfire prevention and response. On the issue of housing and homelessness, we are focused on one of our biggest crises, and that's the lack of affordable housing. $3 billion will be invested over the next 24 months for affordable housing here in California. This will include hundreds of units in Sonoma, Mendocino, and Marin counties, 150 units in Lake County. And we are finally going to break ground this fall on Journey's End Mobile Home Park in Santa Rosa. We are so thrilled about that. Stay tuned. You'll see a groundbreaking announcement coming up in October, November, finally moving forward on Journey's End. This will be both state and federal funds that will be built on that. And we have passed legislation to be able to make it easy to build infill development up to 10 units, streamlining the development process in cities and counties across this state for any development, 10 units or less infill development. We're also going to advance $100 million for homeowners to be able to build accessory dwelling units in their backyard, or granny units as they're also called. So we're moving on that as well. On homelessness, it is a crisis in this state, in big cities, in small. We're going to invest $2.7 billion this year, 2022 and 2023, to be able to build 40,000 permanent supportive units for homeless residents. We spent about $850 million last year and built 6,000 houses that were wrapped with mental health and addiction services. Hundreds were built in Sonoma, Mendocino, Marin, and Humboldt counties. You're going to see 40,000, a minimum of 40,000 additional units built over the next 36 months, over the next 3 years, starting this year, for permanent supportive housing for homeless residents. Again, every unit must be wrapped with drug and alcohol addiction services, as well as mental health services. So there's a 5-year guarantee in funding that the state will provide every county to wrap those permanent supportive homes with the services that are needed. In addition, we're advancing a very innovative project. This has been really important and a priority for me. We call it the California Safe and Clean Streets Initiative. $2 billion to be able to clean up our streets, get graffiti out of our communities, clean up our highways, and we're going to hire 10,000 over the next 3 years, 10,000 formerly homeless and formerly incarcerated residents, and get them into the ranks of Caltrans, to be able to get them a living wage job, to be able to get them benefits and a retirement. We're going to hire 10,000 formerly homeless residents, formerly incarcerated residents, to be able to get them into state service, to be able to clean up our state. Couldn't be more thrilled about that. Finally, Mr. McKinney, I'm going to stop flapping my gums and turn it right back over to you. I want to talk about the coal train. I'm going to give a little bit of background. As you all know, there is a 320-mile rail line that goes from San Francisco Bay all the way up to Humboldt Bay. The SMART line runs that railway from Marin all the way up now to Airport Business Center. They now want to go all the way up to Cloverdale, as you know. That's owned and managed by the SMART line. Everything north from Mendocino County line, Mendocino-Sonoma County line, all the way up to Humboldt Bay, it's an abandoned line. It's in terrible shape. And we're advancing a project that would build out the longest contiguous rail trail in the United States of America. 320 miles, called the Great Redwood Trail. We're about to kick off the community planning and master plan process here this year. Now, there is this anonymous LLC out of Utah that is proposing to ship tens of millions of tons of coal from Utah, Montana, and Wyoming. Coal is the dirtiest and most damaging source of energy out there. Coal is literally the #1 cause of global warming. It's the #1 contributor to our climate crisis. Now, how do we know that they are planning to build? Well, this corporation, again, you can file in Wyoming an anonymous LLC corporation. This corporation has filed paperwork with the federal government, and they say they have assets up to $1.2 billion. So they would work, and seen it in the Press Democrat, with a potential Native American tribe out of Utah, along with other coal suppliers, to bring the coal out from Utah, Wyoming, and Montana, up the Great Redwood Trail line, end at the port of Humboldt, and ship it out to Asia. Again, they've already submitted their initial paperwork at the Surface Transportation Board. We know that we're going to have to fight this. So we are fighting hard to be able to stop this. We're going to put a link to the petition into the chat now. We would like to be able to get 7,000 to 10,000 residents to be able to sign this petition so we can turn it into the Surface Transportation Board that ultimately has to be able to approve this coming through our communities. The coal train would come through Novato, Petaluma, Cotati, Rohnert Park, through Santa Rosa, Windsor, Hillsburg, Cloverdale, Ukiah, Eureka, Willits, and just imagine what we know, according to BNSF Railway, 500 pounds to 1 ton of coal typically escapes for one single loaded car. And I want to remind folks, the railway runs alongside the Russian River and the Eel River. And those two rivers are the main source of drinking water for just under 1 million residents in Marin, Sonoma, Mendocino, and Humboldt counties. So would love to be able to work with you on that. Mr. McKinney, I'm going to end it right here and say this. I just want to say thank you. This is the best job that anybody could ever have. I am so incredibly grateful to work with you day in and day out. I don't take it for granted. It is an absolute privilege. And every time my feet hit the ground in the morning, I promise you, fighting tooth and nail for the North Coast to be able to deliver for the hardworking folks here in Sonoma County and throughout our region. And thank you for allowing me to be with you today. And Mr. McKinney, I'm turning it back over to you, and I'm sorry I went on so long.
That's perfectly fine. What we're going to do is open up to questions. They should be put on the chat line. I'm going to start off by calling on, you can, if you want to say them personally, I'm going to give you a chance to do that. But if not, then what you can do is we'll be glad to read them. I'm going to call on Ken Smith first, who had given me a question ahead of time he wanted to ask. Ken, you're on.
Morning, Ken.
Thank you. Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right, great. I am, first of all, I'd like to thank you for your time this morning and your report. It's very pleasing to know that we have such an accomplished and energetic and insightful representative for us in Sacramento. Thanks again. I am the chair of the Oakmont Energy Resiliency Committee, and as such, we are working on several projects, but as you know, the area of Sonoma Valley has had more than its fair share of power disruptions from PSPS events and threats from wildfire, with a number of structures burned since 2017. And I count 9 PSPS events since 2018, and 2 of them were longer than 5 days. The Oakmont Energy Resiliency Committee was instrumental in bringing solar power to Oakmont's community buildings, and we're currently working for some sustainable, renewable, clean energy backup for those buildings as well as working on some projects for all of Oakmont. However, as a community of 5,000 seniors, approximately, average age 75, and with about 20% of them dependent on powered medical devices, Oakmont needs independent energy resiliency and is striving to become part of PG&E's Community Microgrid Enablement Program, CMEP, and to possibly qualify for federal funding under FEMA's Building Resilience and Infrastructure in Communities program, the BRIC program. My question is, Senator McGuire, how can we work with you and your team to understand and have priority for the CMEP and BRIC programs to help fund an Oakmont area community microgrid and accelerate the creation of distributed energy resources here in Sonoma County?
First of all, I just want to say thank you to Mr. Smith and to the entire group for your leadership on this. This is what California's future looks like, is distributed energy throughout the state, smaller localized systems, and not taking it from one utility that, let's just be candid, is focused on profits and not on people. So Mr. Smith, I'd like to directly answer your question and say this. Number one, happy to be able to work with you on trying to make this a priority for the feds. Number two, I think that we got some initial numbers from you, budget numbers, what it would take to be able to develop the microgrid. I'd like to be able to get some refreshed numbers from you. And then I'm just going to be candid. And I always want to under-promise and over-deliver, and I can't make a promise here. But I'd like to be able to work with you to make a very specific budget ask for Oakmont and a microgrid project. So what I'd like to suggest, if you'd be willing, Mr. Smith, is in the next few weeks, I'd like to sit down with you and any other representatives. I want to get refreshed on where you're at with your budget. And if you don't mind, if you have it, if you don't mind barking it out real quick, and then I'd like to get something in writing from you. And then I'd like to start working with you because I know this has been a priority for the last few years and we need to start making progress. So I'd be honored to work with you on it. And I'll just say we're going to need to figure this out in the next 60 days as far as a hard number. And I also need to know, have you started any environmental and do you have the engineer on board, et cetera? I'm going to stop talking, Mr. Smith, and turn it over to you.
So as far as a number, I don't have a hard number yet. I've looked at several different scenarios and we were trying to determine the parameters of how large a microgrid that we can accomplish here in a short amount of time. I've talked with Electric Power Research Institute. I have talked with the Center for Sustainable Energy. I've talked with the Climate Center here, and I have also spent a fair amount of time talking with folks from PG&E, not specifically of the Community Microgrid Enablement Program, because when I talked with them, they were just thinking about it. But we have hired some consultants, Kenwood Energy, some local residents and neighbors, and we're quite happy that they've consented to assist us in this endeavor.
And I'm going to interrupt you if I can. Mike, is there somebody in your staff that he could just get in touch with? That would be make it easiest.
Absolutely, Mr. McKinney, Mr. Smith. Sophia is going to put her phone number and email in the chat. Mr. Smith, if you email Sophia, we'll get together, and I'd like to bring your consultants to the meeting. And then there's going to be some items that we're going to need to narrow down, and I look forward to getting together.
All right, great. Thank
you. Lynn, you had a question that I thought was good. Where are you? If you want to unmute yourself and ask your question, you're welcome to.
Are you saying Linda?
No, I was saying,
Okay.
I actually, I don't know. Yes, Linda.
Oh, okay. Okay. Hi, good morning. Hi, Mike.
Hey, Linda.
Great to see you. Where are we in the technology of being able to convert seawater into fresh water? It particularly becomes conscious about that when we think of hauling water to Mendocino, which is sitting right on the ocean. Are we working on that technology at all?
Wonderful question. Thank you, Linda. Yes. In fact, the city of Fort Bragg is moving forward with a small desalination project, even as we speak. So I'm just going to be blunt. Desalination projects can be controversial. One, it's a high energy use utility. Number two, it creates this waste called brine. It's very salty material when you take the salt out of the ocean water, and then you have to bring it somewhere to a dump, or some countries just dump it offshore. That would not happen in California. Long story short, yes, And in fact, the city of Fort Bragg has received state funding to build their desalination project. It's a small project, but there is going to be state funding for those type of projects. And it's going to have to be part of the equation to be able to become more drought resilient. So yes, it's moving forward even as we speak. Thank you, Linda. It's so good to see you.
Juanita, you had a question.
Hi, Juanita.
Yes. Hi there. My question has to do with the direct democracy that exists, so-called direct democracy in California. And we're right now going through the throes of what I consider frivolous recalls in both the state and the county. And we constantly have poorly written, ill-considered ballot measures, and there's a lot of money involved. And so my question is, what is being done? What can be done to improve the laws regarding all of those things related to direct democracy in California?
Yeah, thank you, Juanita. We're getting this question a lot, and thank you for this as well. And by the way, I think Juanita has one of the most beautiful backgrounds, and she has put me to shame here today. So long story short, you're going to see recall reform being advanced in the state of California coming up in January. The reason why it won't happen until January, this Friday was the last day of the legislative session. We go back per the Constitution on January 3rd. You are going to see legislation advance in the Senate on recall reform that would impact both state as well as local recall efforts. Stay tuned for this. We're going to want direct engagement. And if you'd be willing, Juanita, I'd love to come back and talk with the group. And we bring in the Secretary of State's office to do a briefing for Oakmont on the proposal. But you will see this coming.
Good.
Senator, I'm so sorry.
Ballot measures?
Go ahead, Juanita.
Are ballot measures going to be considered there too? Because we've gotten a lot of, problems with ballot measures the same way.
To be determined, and I'm not trying to be coy with you whatsoever.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
It's right now, the conversation is simply on direct candidate recalls, to be determined on ballot measures. I don't know if we're going to mix. That's still being discussed. And again, I'm really not trying to be coy with you and hide the ball. I just don't know yet.
No, that makes sense too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rick Lutman, you had a question on CEQA.
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah, Rick Lutman from Sonoma State. Mike, hi.
Hey, so good to see you, sir.
My ears perked up when you mentioned waiving CEQA. I'm fully supportive of your concerns about the broadband, but we have very good reasons to have CEQA. Yes, it involves an extra layer of bureaucratic red tape, as its enemies call it. But that's not enough justification in my mind for waiving it. So I'd like to ask you if there's some particular reason why it would be appropriate to waive CEQA in that case.
I want to say thank you to Mr. Lutman and also how grateful I am for all of this work on all issues of government and politics in this state and right here at Sonoma State. And so two reasons on why we're going to be waiving CEQA for the broadband project. Number one is the federal government has given us 4 years to be able to spend the dough. And there's no exceptions. We got to spend the money within 4 years. It is a very limited exemption to CEQA. The CEQA can only be waived on pre-disturbed dirt, meaning it has to be in the shoulder that either has asphalt or gravel on it. So we're not impacting anything above and beyond the Caltrans right of way to be able to expedite the project, to be able to get this done. Now, private companies, I'll just be honest, Comcast has come to us and said, it's BS that you're doing this for public and not private. Well, we've said, great, if you want to serve these unserved communities that you could have served for literally years and years, have at it during these next 4 years. Let's just be honest, Mr. Lutman, they won't do a damn thing. They're not serving the communities that we're going to serve. But the number one reason why we're doing it is because we have 4 years to spend the money. It's spend it or lose it. Number two is it's very limited on pre-disturbed soil within the Caltrans right away, nothing more.
Question in the chat. What has happened to the various proposals on Route 37?
Additional $4 million is in the budget. So there are 3 major proposals moving forward on Highway 37. So I'm going to talk about the first stretch, and I'm going to do, Mr. McKinney, I'm going to go to lightning round, so I want to make sure we get to a question. So here we go. Lightning round. First, there's 3 different projects on one damn highway. First project, it's from 101 in Novato all the way to the Raceway. 101 in Novato all the way to the Raceway. The first project is we've already raised portions of the highway up, in some areas a foot, some of the most extreme areas 2 feet. That's done. Another segment of this first project is we have brought in and built a flood wall under the most flood prone areas between Highway 101 and the Raceway. Number 3, the ultimate project on this first phase is either a new berm of earth in the most vulnerable areas, or a cantilever, a bridge that would go from the higher elevations and take it out of those lower flood-prone elevations between 101 and the Raceway. Now I want to go to phase 2, the Raceway to Vallejo. This is a 2-step process, and Mr. McKinney, I'm sorry that I'm going, but this 2-step process on phase 2, we're going to remove the barrier, the cement barrier between the Raceway and Vallejo. We're purchasing a barrier remover like you see on the Golden Gate Bridge, where literally that truck every day goes during commute times and they move the barrier, right? So in the morning, we'll have a movable barrier that will open up 2 lanes coming into Marin, 1 lane going out, and in the evening, it will open up 2 lanes going out of Marin, 1 lane coming in. Where that cement barrier is now will become a 3rd lane. So that's our temporary fix. The big fix to that stretch is a bridge that will start at the Raceway and go all the way to Vallejo. That's anticipated to be $2 billion. In the middle of that bridge would be SMART. So we're going to take SMART from Petaluma, Marin, bring it out over to Vallejo. And the reason being is 2/3 of all employees in Marin are from out of county, with the bulk coming from Fairfield, Vacaville, Vallejo. So a lot going on right now. And you're going to see that first phase from 101 to the Raceway started here as far as we have the environmental impact report that will be due here in December. And we hope to kick that big project off here in the next 12 months.
I have 2 more for you. When you talk about the middle for the internet, okay, do you recognize there are communities like Oakmont? We lose our internet because in an outage, there just is not a repeater structure set up to continue to support us. Do you follow me? So the internet itself shuts down.
Well,
okay, which in a time of emergency is the time you don't want it to shut down.
You're damn right, Mr. McKinney. So here's what the state is doing on that. We advanced legislation that is now mandating 72-hour backup for all cell phone sites and internet and internet-based landlines. So the Public Utilities Commission took our bill. They're now implementing it. So what we see during power shutoffs, what we see during fires, the de-energization of the lines, in the next, I'm going to be honest, it's going to take another probably 12 to 24 months to get completed. We're going to have we're going to become the first state in America to mandate 72-hour backup power for all internet and cell phone sites, so we never go down again. And that is being ushered in. The cable companies, like if you have Comcast internet, if you have Sonic internet, if you have AT&T, they have to start deploying the generators in 2022. I mean, it's a hustle. So it's moving. And I promise you in the next 12 to 24 months, it's just going to take that long to get the infrastructure deployed. Relief is on the way, though, with this new law.
Okay, the last question is for those who have a fixed income and are seniors, there's always the concern that all the stuff that has to be done will be paid for by taxes, okay? Not necessarily out of just the wealthy, but out of everyday normal retired people. Would you like to comment?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about all the fire investments that I just talked about taken from the budget surplus. All of the $6 billion for broadband, 40% that we're covering of the $6 billion taken from the surplus. The 60% of the remainder is coming from the federal government and their stimulus plan. When it comes to the homeless initiative that I mentioned, $2.75 billion over 3 years, coming from the surplus. When it comes to the $3 billion for affordable housing, coming from the surplus. We are not looking at tax increases to be able to cover this. These are mostly one-time funds, and we've already ushered in the largest tax breaks for small businesses, as well as individuals and families making $75,000 or less that we've done in 50 years. So to Peggy, it's a great question. Peggy, thank you. All these initiatives that I just mentioned are all being completed with one-time funds that already are in the bank or have been received from the federal government.
Senator, I cannot thank you enough on behalf of all of us here in Oakmont, both for your service to us and also for a wonderful morning to share with us. We will turn you back over to Connor.
George, it's wonderful to see you. I have 2 follow-ups, George, from today, if it's okay. We're going to get together with Mr. Smith and the committee and Kenwood Energy. Number 2, based off of what Juanita was asking, we're going to be prepared for a presentation sometime in January or February on recall reform. And if you'd like us to come back, we could bring the Secretary of State's office with us to be able to help that, if that is an interest of the group.
Yes.
That would be great. And I would comment, we will leave the symposium open after the senator leaves. So if you haven't had a chance to copy down the information in the chat, there is the information regarding how to contact the senator. There's also the information with regard to the poll that they want they want people to sign on the cold chain. So that's all there. Thank you very much. And thank you, Sophia, for joining us as well.
We love Sophia. Thank you, George. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.